Hi everyone, this is Joey Busuttil. Welcome to the EUDAIMONIA Connection podcast season 2. And as I promised, season 2 is going to be sprinkled with younger people. We're going to be interviewing younger people because younger people are doing so much more than my generation. They're actually out there doing a lot of stuff, which is exciting. And I've been getting lots of feedback from everyone in regards to how these interviews have really inspired them to hear how people have taken adversity or taken corners or changes or different paths in their lives to reach fulfillment. So on today's show, we're going to be speaking to a 29-year-old Melbourne boy who has went from musician to lawyer to now being a non-for-profit advocate trying to change the world through his policies, I guess, or his ways of thinking. I'd like to introduce you to Julien Rosendahl. How are you?
Hey, I'm good, Joe. How are you?
Musician? I didn't know you were a musician. That's pretty cool. Like, are we talking professional?
So the first university degree I did was music performance at the Con. I was one of those kids whose parents kind of thrust instruments into their hands. Like, by the time, I think the earliest memory, I was about 3 and I was playing violin. And at one point I had 3 instruments I was trying to kind of juggle on top of school. And I kind of never really expected to actually study music at like a more professional level. But I had a music teacher in high school, cello teacher, who was really influential, really kind of gave me an opportunity to explore music as a more serious kind of pursuit, and kind of told me towards the end of year 12, well, you know, if you want to even think of like the perspective of having a music career, do it now. It's a lot harder to come back to music if you do other things. So I did that, and it was not what I was expecting. I kind of been very academic in high school, and I was always kind of thinking I wanted to go study law, or probably like law or medicine or something like that. And then this came along and I thought, okay, well, I'll have a go and see what happens. It actually ended up being a great experience for 2 years. Really interesting, really cool people. I always think that musicians are probably some of the most humble and hardworking people I've ever worked with, I guess, in a kind of professional sense.
Because there's a passion there, isn't it? Like, it's not like, if you don't get jobs, you don't get anything. So you've got to really hustle and find it. The way that you look now, you could easily be the front man of a band.
Oh, thank you. I did get a mad rush to get a haircut because I've been waiting. I thought, you know, last week everyone's been going for a haircut. Someone at work was like, oh, I waited 2 hours. I was like, I'm not doing that. So I madly rushed just before this chat to get one.
Yeah. So we always start the show by asking the same question, and that is, so because EUDAIMONIA is about fulfillment, so how do you know when you're being, how do you know that you're fulfilled? Like, what do you feel? Or how do you know?
Yeah, I think I've read a few people, I've seen a few people talk about, or I've read in a few different kind of books. I love like self-help books. I'm very kind of geared towards a kind of professional, personal development kind of topic, but there's this concept of like flow where you start, say if it's a work project you're on, or if it's like a hobby of yours, you don't really remember, or you don't really have a concept of time. Things just happen because you're so involved in it, you're so engrossed in it, you don't really care for, I mean, sometimes you can be a little bit tunnel visioned as well, but yeah, when you start feeling that, you know, there's this kind of undercurrent and it's like a really like calm, positive space, and you feel, I guess, curious, like if you're like emotionally or intellectually curious, those kinds of interests of feeling satisfied, I think that's when you probably know, that's probably when you know you're on the right track. I mean,
yeah. I mean, we can call that purpose. It's funny, I was talking about this morning. It's that, it's, you know, when you don't feel like you're at work.
Yeah.
That's the thing. You know how the majority of people can tell they're at work?
Yeah.
So for you, do you feel like, because you've had so many different things, is that what you feel? You don't feel like anything you do is work? Is that what you mean by your answer?
I think it's been a process. Now I would definitely say the work that I do, whether it's actually paid work, whether it's other things that I do that are passions, it doesn't feel like work. But I have definitely had moments in the past where I've been in more or in different workplace environments where it has felt more like a work thing, where you kind of get to Sunday and you think to yourself, oh, Monday's coming.
Yeah. I mean, like when I've only discovered it recently, that whole idea, and I I think the way that I know that I'm in it is I don't know what day it is.
Yeah,
You
that's
know what I
a
mean?
cool.
Like on Sunday, I think it's Wednesday, and I'm going, oh my God, like I'm such an idiot. But it's because I'm just happy doing what I'm doing. So yeah, it's good. All right, are you ready for your first question?
Oh, let's go for it.
So, what do you feel like is the dumbest thing that you've ever done that's actually worked out?
God, I'm going to need time to think. Am I allowed time to answer these questions?
That's the reason why, because we want you just to be vulnerable and just say
Oh,
whatever comes out. Like, think about something that you've done, but in the long run, you can reflect and go, "Wow, I thought that was hard or stupid or whatever," but it actually wasn't. It was a good thing.
well, there's one thing that comes to mind, and probably something I haven't really spoken a lot about it to like friends or family in terms of
See,
with
this is what the podcast is about, so you can speak.
uh, no. So there was this period in a particular workplace where it was a culture that just wasn't gelling for me, wasn't working for me. I don't think it was working for them. Um, and it was, I think, the dumb thing I was doing was trying to set boundaries when the expectation was for me to actually be like pretty much available all the time,
Mm,
and to do the complete opposite. And I don't know whether it was because kind of knew that was the expectation, but I didn't. I kind of wanted to be able to set some limits, like try and leave try and leave work home at a more appropriate time. But it kind of ended up being a real mess, and it was quite early on in my professional career that the feedback I was getting was having quite a lot of impact in terms of me thinking, well, am I actually going to succeed in this, or do I have to start thinking of a pivot? And I say probably was more successful because it has probably been one of the catalysts that's led me towards, I guess, choosing a career path or choosing a professional path that actually has allowed me to align a lot more things. Like it's hard to do the whole work-life balance thing, and I think employers have an even greater expectation of people now. Doesn't matter what kind of industry you're in, but I've always tried to find, I think, or I was forced by that experience to find a path that would allow me to find fulfilling work, but also that would give me some of that kind of structure and boundaries that I would still have time for other things. I mean, like
mm.
there are so many creative pursuits. Music is one that I still try and keep up with. Exercise, training, other time to go traveling, time to hang out with friends. And I don't know, it should be a really basic thing that we all have the ability to kind of manage. But, in some instances, in some industries, there's a different expectation. And I probably did the dumb thing of trying to push it right at the beginning of my career. But it's worked out because
you learned and you became stronger about it.
Yeah.
So, because I know you're really educated and smart, and I love that about you. Like, but can you think about a particular book that has really impacted your life?
Yeah. So there's a particular book that I've been thinking of more recently that I read, and of course it's another kind of like personal development book. But Meg J, Defining Decade. I don't know if you've heard of that one.
I did read the other one you said, the Flow one. So I've got that in my bookshelf, but I don't know that one. So why did it impact you so much?
So Meg J is she's a psychologist, but she deals particularly with young adults in their early to late 20s, and the whole premise of the book is it's looking at the choices you can make as a 20-year-old, and how, if she calls it the defining decade, because there is so much that is, I guess, open in terms of opportunity, but also the kinds of decisions that you make can also send you on a completely different trajectory. She talks about this analogy of the Australian version is you hop on a plane in Perth, and let's say you're the captain of the plane. It's only a few degrees difference between heading towards Darwin, Brisbane, Sydney, or Melbourne. And it's the same kind of analogy that, when you start your 20s, you're starting to make decisions, you're starting to figure out who you are, the kind of things that interest you in terms of, your hobbies, your family, your friends, the work you want to do, what if you want to have like a kind of a personal theory about your purpose, all of that, it can change so much because you have so many influences as you go through your 20s.
Mm.
And there's also an element of, making your own decisions. But again, like we all make decisions based on the information that we have in front of us. And sometimes that's influences from other people that we kind of have closest to us. So that was I guess, a very influential book, because I guess it made me really think about the choices I was making throughout that time.
Yeah.
Maybe
like, listen to you talking, right? I mean, I love it. But, why do you... I'm sorry to interrupt, but I just need to ask this. I think it's important. And it's not even on my list. But why do you think because people your age don't think the way you think.
I know
So
that.
what was the influence... What was the pivotal moment that you understood that life didn't have to be succinct to age? That you could, that you could adapt to, you could go into a conversation with adults, or you could think adult thoughts or adult concepts when you were young. I mean, like, I relate to you because I did similar things, but not to your level. What was the moment that made you realize that that's what you wanted?
I don't think it would necessarily be a moment that I would remember. Actually, can I just bring down the blind, because the sun's started to come straight out in my face. And I know you can edit this, Joe.
I'll edit that part. Let's just answer from the question again.
So it's not so much, I think, an event that I would think of, but it's actually probably more the influence of my parents, particularly my dad. So I come from in what you'd call like an intergenerational family, a blended family. So my dad is in his 70s. My mum's, I think like a 15-year age gap between mum and dad. And then I have siblings that range from 20 to nearly 40. So I kind of had a very broad, I guess, like age reference in terms of family growing up. And my dad he's a real intellectual. And he's always, I think, encouraged all his kids to kind of think quite deeply, or think very purposefully. And I think it's probably more the influence of kind of growing up in that environment where that was kind of the role model I had from my parents, that I didn't really have any other like choice.
So what do people your age, how do they relate to you then? Like, do they like it, or do they feel, do they feel threatened by it, or?
That's a good question. I think I used to try really hard to be friends with everyone, and I've always been like a real pacifist. In high school, I was kind of, trying to be a good kid, and I think, there's that whole area of, I think, queer kind of psychology, the whole concept of being like the grade A kid, because there's a lot of like work you're having to do to kind of come to terms with who you are, right?
But it could also be that you're just a nice person, because I relate to you, right? I'm like that too. And it just means that we're nice, but we sometimes are trying to, we try to adapt so we can fit in, because everyone's different, right?
Oh yeah.
But the reality is that I think as time progresses, we're realizing that you can be nice to everyone, because that's what we want. We want nice people, right? So, if you've got the ability to connect with everyone, I wouldn't change that. I would actually embrace that, which I think more people should embrace, because it means that you're not judgmental.
Yeah. Oh, I agree. I think in terms of like relating to, and I mean, it's with my own kind of age group, it's probably the case that I've been able to shift away from trying to please everyone to kind of appreciating who I am and my personality and the way that I think. And there are some friends who, the relationship is probably more a case of, they really come to me in terms of asking for questions or perspective, and I really love that.
Yeah.
And there are some friends,
and I guess not everyone had a father like you.
But like my dad.
Well, your father was a gift, like not everyone had a father that encourages that. A lot of teenagers becoming young adults now, they're lost because they didn't have any guidance in their earlier years. So that's why they're overwhelmed and I mean, so on.
I guess, I wish, if that's the case, I wish more people had the experience that I had.
Exactly, yeah. Well, they are by listening to this podcast, and I guess, because that's the thing is like, not that I want to harp on this, but like a lot of people could look at you and think he's young, he knows nothing. But in reality, you know a lot more than lots of people I know that are double your age. Wow. So, it's interesting. So, not to give you a big head, let's go to another question that brings you down a bit. No, it's like, so what do you feel, and please don't say nothing, okay? What do you feel as the older you get, you're becoming more and more afraid of?
I would say it's a really weird one, because it's probably like way too advanced to be thinking of this, but like being afraid of not maximizing every moment.
Why is that? Why do you think that's too advanced? I think when my mum passed away, that was one of the questions that I had wished. But you're here, you're at this point. So don't you think that that's actually an advantage that you're thinking of that at the time that you should be thinking about it?
Oh, yeah, sure. There is an advantage to it, but I think it's also not getting caught up in, because I have a bit of a tendency to be maybe a hypochondriac, or to worry too much and to overthink, and that can easily turn into a bit of a mental spiral where, you know, I'll be like, oh, I didn't do this, or I haven't yet done this, and then I kind of get into this, you know, vortex of worry and thought, and it's actually, you know, in the broader scheme of things, it's not that much of a concern.
Well, yeah, can you maybe, I think that's the point that I think maybe you should explain to people, because you're an achiever and you've done so well, but you know, thank you for sharing your vulnerability, saying that you're a warrior, which makes you human, right? So what do you think the trick is for you not to buy into that? Because you said that it's not a big deal, but for some people it's a big deal. So what's your trick of going, I'm not listening to that today?
Realizing that there is enough time to achieve everything, because in the past, I have been so like fastidious or so goal oriented in so many things that like in the past I've tried to do like ridiculous amounts of different projects and tasks all at the same time, and I've realized that it is in fact a lot better to, if you want to achieve things, to just be a little bit more purposeful and have you can still have that big variety of things you want to do, but like focus your time more on just a few things, and then give yourself more time, let's say,
to absorb it and to enjoy it, and to, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, like, so do you feel that, I agree, you could do a lot of things at once, but do you think that really what you're saying is that you just need to learn to enjoy the moment? Because say, for example, something bad happens and you're gone. So it doesn't really matter if you achieved everything because you're gone. But what really matters is, have you enjoyed every moment?
True.
So I found that when I was your age and I did what you did, I just couldn't enjoy everything because I had so much on.
Yeah. And that's something I relate to. And I think, again, well, the other part of it is, so my partner, Michael, is very perceptive about things like mindfulness. And I think that element has kind of rubbed off on me, because that's where I've kind of started to think, okay, well, there is, in fact, you know, I guess time is as long and as short as it is, right? So we're here on Earth. We don't know when our time is up, this is kind of very existential, right? But we don't know when that comes up. But as you're saying as well, when that time's up, we won't even know because we won't be around. So being able to kind of tap into that concept of, it's okay where everything's at. It might not be perfect. It might not be ideal. It might not be the ideal that we have in our mind, but maybe where we are at the moment is actually fine. And maybe the ideal that we have in our mind might serve us at a later stage, but it doesn't need to serve us right now. And I mean, I say that, but those are things I'm still trying to come to terms with.
Well, I guess, can you reconcile it by, telling yourself or telling us if, when you do too much, are you taking things for granted? Because you are doing too much. I'm just wondering. Or do you feel like you can appreciate everything that you do when it's a lot?
Oh, I can appreciate what I can appreciate, and I have gratitude for the things that I do, but I think it's more that I will generally end up carrying a sense of guilt because, let's say, the performance or the things, let's say the outcomes that I want to achieve haven't yet quite gotten there, or there are certain things that are still left on the to-do list that I probably could have. But I also say that I'm also one of the world's greatest procrastinators. It's one of those weird dichotomies. You can be really productive, but you can also be really, lazy.
Yeah.
But yeah,
which again makes you human.
Yeah, that's it. And I think it's a lot of it's also just learning to be less harsh on yourself. I'm certainly like the world's biggest critic of my own like achievements and whatnot. But I've learned to be a lot better about just saying, it's fine. That where you are on the journey right now is fine, and
well, it is exactly where you are.
Yeah.
So Michael's mindfulness is all about just getting you to slow down and be in the moment. And in that moment, you can be chaotic, but you don't have to worry about tomorrow's chaos until tomorrow.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. what do you feel that you strongly suspect but you have no proof of? I love this question. I love the fact that you've got this question because it's such a sort of it's such a four-dimensional question, isn't it?
Yeah.
So it's sort of like you could sort of add. I'm going to add a word that I don't really want to add, but it might give context to the listeners, and that could be, do you have any conspiracies, theories, or do you have any beliefs or suspect things that are out there but you have no proof of, but in your gut you really think that it's true or you suspect it?
It's. I was going to go with more like maybe like a theory, but not a conspiracy.
Sorry, I didn't mean to correct
No. It probably. I mean, this is coming from like a pure perspective of like what we're seeing and what evidence is, but a lot of the things that I have been motivated by come from this kind of interest in watching the way that the world is kind of developing. So I have an interest in following things like current affairs and politics, but I'm not political. I have a hunch, for example, that we have the ability to do a whole lot more in terms of if let's say the majority of the population actually are in favour of doing something meaningful on climate change, I think we can actually achieve a whole lot more. But I don't see a lot of evidence of, I guess, people in their own individual capacity kind of
taking it seriously or like taking it on.
Well, I think like realizing that even though it seems like some of these big issues that society is facing seem like they're so like global, and I'm just here in my little apartment and I don't really have any influence. It's in fact the complete inverse, that each of us actually has a whole lot of influence if we're willing to say, well, my little like 0.00001% of influence in the global kind of like scheme of the way that the world churns and turns over time, that tiny amount actually does contribute to something. Because I think.
So can I ask you what you think, because you got again the younger perspective. So I agree totally 100% with you, but what do you feel is the reason why that's happening? Because I sort of get like COVID should have really woken people up. It's like, why do we have to wait for the worst scenario to actually take action? Why can't we do, what do you think is causing that? Is it laziness, or what do you think?
I wouldn't necessarily call it laziness. I think it's more how comfortable people feel about discussing these issues and how comfortable people feel about kind of emerging out of, like, let's say, the comfort zone. I think I'm not trying to say that I'm the best person at doing this. It's still difficult, every time someone asks me to kind of, take on something a little bit more challenging, or I decide, okay, I'm going to take on some leadership on something. But I think, everyone is quick to find reasons why it's not possible for them to have that kind of influence.
Yeah.
When in fact,
it's like everyone's like, can I just give you? I interviewed a girl today, and she's created this foundation which I think you will love, and it's called Ripple, and it starts with one person. And so her vision is to have this ripple, and I think it relates to what you're saying, because everyone, I think a lot of people think it takes a group of people to make change. They don't realize it takes one person.
Oh yeah, absolutely. 100%.
So is there, do you think your generation or the younger people are more open to that compared to, say, my age group?
I think the stakes are so much higher for our generation that we are realizing if we don't stand up or we don't start, finding our way of having some kind of influence or making some kind of positive change, that in fact it's kind of, we're now at the crunch point, to be honest.
Yeah.
And that's
okay.
I think it's one of those things when if you're one of those individuals that kind of sees something, like if you saw a car crash on the road, you can't so easily just ignore it and keep walking past it. Even if you were to do that, I think you would be haunted in your mind by the images of what you've seen. And I think it's not the greatest analogy, but
No, it's a good analogy, because what I would add to that is, I think people have seen the car crash, right? But what we have to start realizing is that we're going to start seeing car crash after car crash. So we're driving down a freeway and it's multiple car crashes. And so the question would be, when are you going to stop?
Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So I think people like looking, because, you know, think about like David Attenborough's documentaries, how everyone goes, oh my God, we need to make change. But it should really, if we see those images, I mean, when I saw the orangutan on that tree and he was like in the fire, I just thought that if people don't want to change after seeing that, then, but we still look at it and then we move on to the next thing.
Yeah. And it's not laziness, I don't think. I think it's just, realizing that things are getting so much more complicated and that you kind of have to start getting out of the comfort zone.
All right, so I'm gonna throw again another question that's on my list. I love the fact that I can do this with you. So, and I want you to answer very succinctly. And you don't just go into a lot of detail. Okay, so it's 3021. What do you see?
We're all living on Mars.
Okay. Oh, wow. So you think that we're going to leave the planet?
Oh yeah. I mean,
are you talking about everyone? I thought only the rich would go. So you see everyone?
I think so I have one of my favorite movies of all time is Interstellar, and I'm not really a huge sci-fi person. I think, in fact, it
is a good movie
because of the kind of like subplot about the people and the personalities and the kind of family story to it. But I have followed a few kind of similar story threads, and I think like fictional story threads, and I think even if, let's say, we planned that, you know, let's say Elon Musk was super successful in setting up a Mars colony that was only for the top 1%, I feel like there would be possibly enough incredibly talented like scientists who developed the technology for Elon Musk to then say, no, in fact, we're going to share that technology with a bunch of people. It'll kind of, democratize, and then there'll be like
I sort of see it more like an Elysium, where the planet Earth is where the lower class people survive on the climate change environment, and then the rich people go and have the nice. But I'll be gone anyway. Thank you for that. So you feel like, just to add to that, I guess you feel hopeful.
Yes,
your answer had hope to it.
Yeah, it's hopeful. But there's also there's a strong element of like, not pragmatism, but like realism. Because then I would probably say that part of the narrative of that future story is that basically like humankind takes all of its problems to Earth and then transports it to Mars.
Yeah. Okay. You know, I could ask you a million questions about this, but I think that'll be another podcast. I love this question. You're getting good questions. What's your freak? What's your freak on? Like, what makes you a freak? Like, everyone's a freak, right? So what makes you? What's your freak element? And if it's too personal, you don't have to answer.
Oh no. I'm probably going back to like what you were talking about at the beginning. It's probably just my like overthinking nature, or my like very deep thinking nature.
That's not freaky. Come on, we want more. For
some people, they don't really relate to it, and you know what?
Yeah. So you don't feel like there's anything that's like, you know, that you're the only one that does, like nothing that you sort of, not that you have to be secretive or anything, but like, you know, for example, I love eating pickles with ice cream. I love it, and I'm not even pregnant. It's like I love having olive sandwiches, right, with twisties, and people just go, "What is?" But I can't get enough of it. So that's my little freak on.
Okay, you've given me a good prompt, because there's one like sandwich spread combination that I do every now and then, which I actually really really love. My dad followed this particular thing, and peanut butter and sauce, like ketchup. So I do peanut butter and barbecue sauce.
Not even, so it's not peanut butter and jelly. It's just peanut butter, and so you're sort of having, it's sort of like double savory in a way, isn't it?
It is, because people always think of peanut butter as generally like a sweet spread, but then you also use peanut butter and satay, so it can be savory, and then most sauces are so high in sugar that in fact you could almost think of them as being as sweet. So
and really what you're saying, really, I think you've just proven that you can really eat anything. You know what I mean? It's all got to do with adaptability. It's just you've been able to adapt to the sauce flavor.
Oh, I mean, like there are certain like brand combinations that work better, you know, paired with each other. But it's I mean, yeah, you can kind of do any combination you want, but I think there are certain limits. I'm probably pushing.
Yeah. No, actually, I was just thinking in 3021, we're going to be drinking our meals anyway.
Oh, well, it'll be like bioengineered food. That,
Yeah.
not
Oh,
real.
look, this is a pill of peanut butter. I'll mix it with my sauce.
Well, I don't know if people even remember what peanut butter is by that point. It'll be like it'll just be like a tablet of nothing that's
Oh,
got
gosh.
all the nutrients you need.
Yeah.
Right?
So if you look at your life, I know you're only young, but what do you hope to be your legacy?
Oh.
What do you want people to be saying about you once you leave? That you were what?
I didn't waste any opportunity to bring people together.
Okay. And do you feel, I know that this is a projection question, but do you feel that in that legacy there's something big that you've accomplished? Do you feel it in your gut that there is something big that's going to happen that we're going to all talk about?
Well, not in the sense of that has happened, but so the nonprofit that I'm part of, Goodie Volunteering, basically you think of it like Tinder for volunteering. So we're connecting people who have a particular interest. Let's say you really want to do event style volunteering, you want to work with an RSPCA style kind of charity. We basically connect you with that particular charity that has a need for volunteers.
That's so good.
And I would say, so the whole experience of COVID has been really difficult because obviously, lockdown, no one's been able to do any kind of volunteering. It was also an opportunity for us to start thinking of ways of operating that are a little bit more kind of streamlined, that aren't as much of a burden on us, because previously we'd basically be cold calling people. Like if I had someone that listed any interest in, working for Midsummer, then I'd call them and say, hey, look, they've got a fair day that's coming up. Do you want to come along and volunteer? But now we've got an opportunity. Things are opening up. I don't know what no one knows what next year's going to look like. We all are very hopeful, and I think it's important to be hopeful. But, there are a lot of people, I think, out there who are looking forward to just getting out and about and just socializing in a way. And volunteering is a fantastic way to do it because
so so if I was to put the links and all that, is it people can contact you?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you can Google Goodie Volunteering and you'll see our webpage. At the moment, we haven't really got much in the way of opportunities because we're still trying to establish those connections and kind of figure out what events are kind of COVID safe and people can actually volunteer at. But there are some that will be coming online next year. So, I'm hopeful that we can really kind of hit the ground running, and just give as many people an opportunity just to kind of get out there and be part of the community again. Because I think it's been 2 years. We've all been at home. We've all been on Zoom and Skype and Microsoft Teams, and there's, I think, a real fatigue in terms of just talking to people.
On the computer. Yeah. I mean, do you feel like that? I mean, again, I'm just going to try and probe a bit deeper. But do you feel that if you just don't overthink it, just even if it's just made up, your legacy is going to have something that you haven't, something you haven't even started yet? What would you like it to be? What would you like to leave behind that's a big impact? And again, it doesn't have to be anything you're doing now. It could be it just could be the fact that you say, I invent a peanut butter and sauce, tablet for Mars. And Mars is going to be calling it the Julian. Do you have any aspirations of just leaving behind, or are you quite happy with your answer that what you've already said?
If there was any kind of legacy, it would probably be more that just being able to contribute to So the real motivation for Goodie is just trying to help connect people, because I think that there's a sense I notice where we've become a whole lot more volatile. We've become a whole lot more disconnected. People are taking things too seriously, but it's just we've kind of lost the art of just connecting one another and not taking the differences that we have as being reasons why we can't establish some kind of rapport, some kind of friendship or relationship. And so if there was a legacy, it would be more that, I've helped, recreate that sense of community, because I'm kind of one thing I am worried about is that we're going to become more and more siloed. We're going to become more and more obsessed with
just
our
as
own, like,
just as
social media bubble.
Facebook introduced its virtual reality platform, like where I saw the demonstration. Did you see the demonstration of that?
Yeah.
Like everything was people hanging out, but no one was actually in the same room. It's like that. You're so right. I'm going to move on because I know that we're coming close to the end. I want you to tell me what you feel would be one of your main problems if you were female.
Oh,
what would be one of the challenges that you would have to face daily or often as a female?
I don't know whether it's a challenge. I think it's probably more a very different perspective, but I think it would be trying to set your own personal kind of trajectory, but understand how all the kind of expectations of society say, you get married, you have kids, you follow a particular rule. And I'm not, I'm a big feminist, and I think that there are so many opportunities for women, and there are so many women who are doing an incredible job, but I still think there are issues with, women being able to return to the workforce after choosing to have a family. I don't see myself having a family of my own, but I think it's still probably sets up most women to have to try and find a way of living within that particular expectation of what society has for women. And I think for men, men have a lot more freedom,
privilege,
and are criticised if they end up having an affair.
Yeah.
For a woman, if you were to do that, that would be absolutely career ending, and you'd be socially ostracized.
Yeah. So do you think that understanding that you're giving, do you think that you've experienced anything close to that as a man? Or do you think that you're basing it on perception?
Part of it's based on perception. Part of it's, I think, based on, different kind of lived experience. But if you, like, the experience of being a gay person, being someone who is of a different ethnic kind of background, and then also growing up, I guess, with that kind of intergenerational aspect, like, I would say that I've kind of understood different minority pressures from different perspectives. And I think on that basis, I can relate to how it's difficult for women to be able to be, I guess, very independent and to set their own kind of path when there are so many expectations that you conform to X, Y, Z.
Yes.
And, again, as a gay man, you have that. You actually, I think, have a huge amount of opportunity to fashion your lifestyle the way that you want to. But I also recognize there are a lot of pressures, and it's not like a completely rosy picture. There's a lot of struggling. There's a lot of heartbreak in our community as well. But I would understand, and I can relate to how difficult it could be for a woman to be able to make that headway and kind of go out there.
And like, I feel like the word you're saying, like, this thing about just owning who you are, and it takes courage, but which is good, because that's what I wanted the message to be, is that sometimes you've got to fight for what you want. And I know that we're very behind with women, but I think it just takes a man to see a woman differently, and if that ripples through, then it starts to change. Because I do think there's a lot of inequality. It's terrible.
Oh yeah, but it shouldn't take a man to it should.
I know, but I'm saying, but I do feel like men need to change their attitude by training. It's all about, like, it's funny how we're talking about girls and mothers and children and all that, but it should be fathers pulling their sons aside and teaching them, because it has to start somewhere. Because a lot of times it's the girl that always gets, like you were saying, the girl gets pulled up.
Well, it's also the on the flip side, it's also the opportunity for men to take things like parental leave, and for it to be a really kind of celebrated thing. I know there are some workplaces that are doing an incredible job of it, but maybe that's one thing that men struggle with. It's that, okay, so there is that whole kind of gendered expectation, right? So men should be the ones that work, have professional lives. Women can have that too, but there's a little bit more of an expectation for a man to not really take leave or work part-time consistently, because it kind of doesn't really match,
But that's what I mean. It takes courage. I can remember when I went part-time, and I remember when I lived a life that seemed very unusual, because I was in corporate, I was transitioning to this work, so I went part-time, I didn't tell anyone, and so the judgment was really big, because all of a sudden I went from being a serious player to being, oh, he's part-time. So it takes courage for the men to do those roles without, because if the men don't apply for those roles, then it's not going to be normalized.
True.
Yeah. Okay, last question, fun question is, who would play you in a movie and what would be the title?
I don't think many actors that can, or I just don't watch enough movies to really.
Okay, so you're going to play yourself, maybe.
Really cool. Only because I was listening to some podcasts. This is really, really weird. Okay, maybe there's something quirky about me, but I do quite like James Bond films. And so I've been kind of listening to the whole story, like the whole kind of intrigue about who's going to play the next.
Yes.
And someone suggested Dev Patel. And then now that you've asked me this question, I think, it'd be really cool to have Dev Patel play me if my life was a bio movie.
What would the title be? What would be the premise of the movie through the title? So, is it a bang heavy title, or do you have a more gentler title?
It would probably be really intellectual, like thoughts and musings. I don't know. That's a really terrible one, but
no, it's not terrible because it's yours. It's like everyone. By the way, everyone gets this question. This is not just a one-off. Everyone gets, because I think it's fascinating to actually to think about who would play you, and I also think that, for example, everyone should have a series of very professional photos taken every 9 months, every a year and a half or 2 years, right? Because when you look at your life, I think it's important to celebrate the fact that you did look particularly good when you thought you may not have, or that everything is representative of that. So now every time I see Dev Patel, I'm going to think of you.
Oh,
Julian, thank you so much for answering the questions. And again, I swear to God, I did not pick the questions. That was random. I just think my chart knew exactly what to ask you.
It was a blessing. So,
and if anything, we're going to learn now peanut butter and barbecue sauce, people. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You've been listening to the EUDAIMONIA Connection podcast. So don't forget, the podcast is out every Wednesday at 9 a.m. Now, season 2 is about to finish, but we will be back in 2022 for season 3. Now, anything that you want to know about Julian's volunteer work, they'll be linked down below. And don't forget to hit subscribe and like so you get notified of this podcast and my other podcast, The Secret Means Business. Have a great week, everyone. Namaste, and keep looking for fulfillment. Bye. Thanks, buddy.
I've been waiting all my life for something. I've been down the darkest roads and up in the clouds, but I've always felt that something's missing. That was until I found you right there in the crowd. You came into my life and started a fire. You made me feel like I could touch the sky. Oh, there's nothing missing now that you're my desire. Now all I have to do is to make you mine. 'Cause I know, and you know what we could be. Like a song, like a perfect melody. Baby, don't say you don't believe in me. 'Cause you know, and I know, we're onto something good. You know, and I know, we got something good. I've been waiting for the one forever. Finally I got you, baby, here in my heart. When I'm with you I feel so much better, oh yeah. Before you I was just a shell, so stuck in the dark. You came into my life and started a fire. You made me feel like I could touch the sky, oh. There's nothing missing now that you're my desire. Now all I have to do is to make you mine. 'Cause I know, and you know what we could be. Like a song, like a perfect